I'm staying. Weeks later, nothing about our lives was suddenly perfect. We still had careful days. We still talked things through more than once. But we were honest. We chose each other deliberately, not out of fear or habit. The story ended quietly, the way real ones do. Not with certainty about forever, but with trust, shared space, and the understanding that love grows stronger when people stop running from it. My name is Philip. I am 32 years old. I work as a plumber, mostly small private jobs, apartments, old houses, things people put off until something breaks. I live alone in a quiet building on the edge of the city. I have lived there for almost 3 years now. I keep to myself, go to work, come home tired, and try not to complicate my life more than necessary. That evening was already long before my phone rang. It was close to 9, and I had just taken off my work boots when I saw a message from my neighbor, Monica. We had spoken before, nothing personal, just polite hellos in the hallway. She wrote that her kitchen sink was leaking badly and asked if I could take a look. I hesitated. I was exhausted. But leaks don't wait, and I knew what panic sounds like when water won't stop. I grabbed my tools and went upstairs. When she opened the door, I could tell she had been crying earlier, or at least holding it back. Her smile was polite but tight. The apartment smelled like sugar and butter, the kind of smell you can't fake. She apologized 3 times before I even stepped inside. I told her it was fine and went straight to the sink. The leak wasn't complicated, but it was messy. Old pipes, poor ceiling, the kind of job that takes longer than it should. While I worked, she hovered nearby, not interfering, just talking. She told me she was a pastry chef and worked mostly from home. That baking kept her busy, but also alone. I nodded, focused on the pipe, answering when it felt natural. There was an uncomfortable quiet between sentences. Not awkward, just heavy. Like both of us were tired in different ways. When I finally tightened the last connection and turned the water back on, everything held. I cleaned up, washed my hands, and stood there for a second longer than needed. Monica thanked me again, softer this time. I told her she could call me if anything else went wrong and headed for the door. That was when she said it. I don't want you to leave. It wasn't dramatic. No raised voice. Just honest, like the words slipped out before she could stop them. I turned around, confused. She looked embarrassed immediately, her face red, her hands clasped together. She tried to explain, said she didn't mean anything strange, that the apartment felt too quiet tonight. I didn't know what to say. I wasn't prepared for that kind of moment. I told her it was late, that she should rest, that everything was fixed now. She nodded, clearly disappointed, but didn't argue. I left with a strange weight in my chest that didn't go away. That night, I barely slept. Over the next days, we ran into each other more often. In the hallway, by the mailbox, outside the building. Small conversations, nothing more. But something had shifted. There was a familiarity that hadn't been there before. A softness. A week later, she asked if I could help with a cabinet door. Then with a faucet in the bathroom. Small things. I told myself it was normal. Still, I noticed she always made tea, always tried to make me stay a little longer. I noticed how carefully she listened when I spoke. One evening, after I fixed a loose handle, we sat at her small kitchen table. She brought out a plate of pastries she had baked earlier that day. They were warm and imperfect, clearly not made for sale. She said she only baked like that when she was nervous. She told me about her last relationship. How it ended slowly, without shouting, without honesty. How being alone afterward felt safer, but heavier. I listened. I didn't interrupt. When she asked about me, I told her the truth. That my last breakup made me cautious. That I learned how easily things break when people stop talking. There was a silence after that, but it wasn't uncomfortable. When I finally stood up to leave, she walked me to the door again. This time, she didn't stop me. She just said thank you and smiled, a real smile now. I left feeling something unfamiliar. Not excitement. Not fear. Something quieter. Hope, maybe. I didn't know then how fragile this beginning was. I only knew that something had started the moment she asked me not to go. I did not plan to start coming over to Monica's apartment more often. It happened naturally, without intention. One small message here, one quiet knock there. A cabinet that would not close properly. A bathroom tap that kept dripping at night. Things she could probably live with, but chose not to. Each time I came, the apartment felt less tense. The smell of baked dough and sugar became familiar. Monica stopped apologizing so much. She still watched me work, but now she talked more freely, as if the words had been waiting. She told me about her days, about waking up early to bake before orders came in, about how lonely it felt to work from home when the world stayed outside the window. I told her about my jobs, about old houses with bad pipes, about people who waited too long to fix things. We laughed quietly about how life breaks slowly, then all at once. Nothing between us was rushed. There were no sudden moves, no promises, just presence. One evening, I finished tightening a loose pipe under her sink and realized I had nowhere else to be. She offered coffee, then tea, then asked if I wanted to try something new she had baked but was not sure about. We sat at the kitchen table, our shoulders not touching, but close enough to feel the warmth. She spoke about her last relationship more openly this time, about how she slowly became invisible to the man she loved, how she stopped asking questions because she was afraid of the answers. I listened, understanding more than I wanted to admit. I had done the same thing once, in a different way. I told her that after my breakup, I chose silence over risk, that I fixed pipes because they made sense. You saw the problem. You repaired it. You tested it. People were different. She nodded and said that was exactly why she baked. Because ingredients did what they were supposed to do, if you treated them right. After that night, something changed. I started coming by even when nothing was broken. Sometimes just to return a tool I did not need. Sometimes because she asked how my day went. Sometimes because I wanted to hear her voice. We never called it anything. It felt too fragile to name. There were moments when she pulled back slightly, afraid of leaning too much. I felt it and stepped back too. We were careful with each other, like people carrying something easily dropped. One evening, while helping her move a heavy shelf, our hands touched for longer than necessary. Neither of us moved away immediately. She looked at me, searching my face, then looked down. I said nothing. The silence said enough. Later that night, she admitted she was scared. Not of me, but of herself. Of wanting something and losing it again. I told her I felt the same. That trusting someone again felt like standing under a pipe you just repaired, waiting to see if it would leak. We both smiled at that. Days passed. Then weeks. We began to cook together, clean together, share ordinary moments that did not feel ordinary anymore. When I was there, the apartment felt alive. When I left, I missed it more than I expected. Still, everything remained unspoken. One night, after dinner, she rested her head briefly on my shoulder. Just for a second. Then she straightened up, apologizing softly. I told her she did not need to apologize, that I was not going anywhere. She looked at me then, surprised, and asked if I was sure. I said yes, but quietly. Neither of us knew how thin the ground under us still was. We were building something without checking how strong it really was. I did not notice the exact moment when Monica stopped being just my neighbor. It happened quietly, the way important things often do. One day I realized I was thinking about her while working in someone else's apartment, tightening a pipe and wondering if she had baked anything new that morning. I realized I checked my phone more often, hoping to see her name. I began finding reasons to stop by that had nothing to do with repairs. Sometimes I brought tools I had not even used. Sometimes I said I wanted to make sure everything was still holding. She never questioned it. She always opened the door with that same soft smile, as if she had been expecting me. Her apartment felt different now. Lived in. Warm. There were always notes with orders taped to the fridge, trays cooling on the counter, the quiet hum of the oven in the background. I helped her reorganize shelves to make more space for baking. We worked side by side, bumping into each other, laughing quietly when flour ended up where it did not belong. She baked while I fixed small things that did not really need fixing. A loose hinge. A squeaky drawer. We moved around each other carefully, aware of how close we were, but pretending not to notice. One afternoon, she asked if I could help her set up a small work table near the window. As we carried it together, she told me this was the spot where she liked to think, where ideas came to her. She said she had almost given up baking after her breakup, but slowly, it started feeling like hers again, like a piece of herself she had taken back. I told her that was how I felt about my work, that fixing things made me feel useful when I was not sure how to be anything else. She listened carefully, like every word mattered. That alone made me feel seen in a way I was not used to. We began sharing meals without planning them. Simple food, soup, toast, pastries that did not sell, but tasted perfect anyway. We sat close now, sometimes our knees touching under the table. Neither of us pulled away. Still, we avoided certain words. We did not talk about what we were becoming. It felt safer not to say it out loud. One evening, after a long day, I came over and found her sitting on the kitchen floor, her back against the cabinet. She looked exhausted. She admitted she had taken on too many orders and felt overwhelmed. I sat down next to her without asking. We did not speak for a while. She leaned her head against my shoulder, slowly, as if giving me time to stop her. I did not. I stayed still, feeling her breathing even out. It felt right in a way that scared me. She apologized again, out of habit. I told her to stop. I told her she did not have to be careful with me all the time. The words surprised both of us. She looked at me then, really looked at me, and asked if I meant that. I said yes. That night, when I left, she walked me to the door like always. But this time, before opening it, she reached for my hand. It was tentative, almost unsure. I held it back, steady. We stood there longer than necessary, saying nothing, understanding more than words could explain. After that, everything felt closer, but also more fragile. We started spending evenings together regularly, watching old movies, talking about nothing and everything, sharing stories that were not painful, and then slowly, ones that were. She told me about the moment she realized her last relationship was over. I told her about the day I packed my things and moved into my apartment, promising myself I would keep my life simple. There were moments when I felt myself pulling back, afraid of how much I wanted this. She noticed. She always noticed. Instead of pushing, she gave me space. That made me want to stay even more. One night, as we cleaned up after dinner, she rested her hand on my arm. Just for a second. But she did not remove it right away. I turned to her. She looked nervous, but determined. She said she did not want to pretend anymore, that she felt something growing and did not want to ignore it out of fear. Her voice trembled when she said she was scared of losing me before she even had me. I told her the truth, that I was scared too, that I did not know how to do this perfectly, that I might make mistakes, but that I wanted to try. She smiled then, a mixture of relief and emotion, and for the first time, she leaned in without hesitation. Our kiss was slow, careful, more like a question than an answer. But it felt honest. We did not rush anything after that. We simply allowed ourselves to be closer, to touch, to sit together without pretending it meant nothing. I went home that night knowing something real had started, and also knowing how easily it could be broken. The first weeks after that night felt almost unreal, not in a dramatic way, but in a quiet, steady way that made ordinary moments feel different. Monica started leaving a mug on the counter for me without asking if I would come by. I started keeping a spare toothbrush in my bathroom and never told myself it was temporary. We still moved carefully, still checked each other's faces before saying anything too bold, but there was warmth now that did not disappear when the door closed. The fragile part was still there, though. It showed up in small things. In how Monica sometimes went silent when a couple argued in a movie scene. In how I sometimes stared too long at my phone when it buzzed, as if I expected trouble. Neither of us said it out loud, but we both knew we were carrying old stories into something new. That evening started like one of our best ones. Monica had a big order the next morning, so she had been baking all afternoon. When I came in, the air was thick with sweetness and heat. There were cooling racks on the table, trays lined up, notes scribbled in neat handwriting. She looked tired but proud, her hair tied up, flour on her cheek without her noticing. I washed my hands and asked what she needed. She handed me a dish towel and told me to dry the mixing bowls while she finished piping. It felt normal now to be part of her routine. We worked around each other in that small kitchen without bumping into fear. She talked about a new client who wanted a simple cake but kept changing their mind. I joked that plumbing clients did the same, only with sinks instead of frosting. She laughed and leaned her shoulder into mine for a second, like she could not help it. After everything was packed away, she made us dinner. Nothing fancy. Pasta, salad, and a piece of bread she had warmed in the oven. We ate at the table, knees brushing sometimes, talking about the day, about the building, about small plans. She mentioned a weekend market where she could sell pastries. I said I could help carry boxes. She smiled like that meant more than help. Later, we sat on the couch with a blanket over our legs. The living room light was low. Monica rested her head against my chest and traced small circles on my sleeve, absent-minded. I felt myself relax in a way I had not allowed in years. Then my phone buzzed. I did not even check it right away. I was used to ignoring notifications during work. But it buzzed again, then again, quick and impatient, like someone demanding attention. Monica lifted her head slightly. Is everything okay? Probably a client, I said, reaching into my pocket. When I pulled the phone out, the screen lit up with a name. A woman's name Monica had never heard before. There were 2 messages stacked. The first one short, the second longer. I only caught pieces at first glance, but it looked personal enough to make my stomach tighten. Monica's eyes moved to the screen. Not in a sneaky way. It was right there, bright in the dim room. Her face changed in a second. The softness drained out of her expression like someone opened a valve. I felt it. That shift. I cleared my throat and locked the screen too quickly. Too sharply. Monica sat up straight. Her hands went still on the blanket. Who is that? It's nothing, I said, and the words came out wrong immediately. Her gaze stayed on me, steady but wounded. Nothing doesn't text like that. I should have breathed. I should have explained calmly. But something old in me reacted first. The part that hated being questioned, not because I had something to hide, but because questions had once turned into accusations in my past. The part that told me to protect myself by shutting down. It's a client, I said again, firmer. Someone I did work for. Monica did not shout. She did not demand my phone. But her voice changed, lower and tighter. Why would a client message you like that at night? I hesitated. That hesitation was enough to poison the moment. She looked away for a second, and I saw her swallow. When she looked back, her eyes were glossy, but her tone tried to stay controlled. Philip, I'm not trying to start a fight. I need to understand. I could have told her right then. The truth was simple. It was messy, but simple. The name on my phone belonged to a woman I had worked for months ago. She was divorced, lonely, and she had started sending messages that crossed lines. I had tried to be polite. I had ignored some. I had told her once to stop. She had not completely stopped. But the moment Monica asked, my pride flared. Not pride like arrogance, but pride like a shield. I hated that something outside our apartment could suddenly make Monica look at me like I was a stranger. I don't think I should have to explain every message, I said. Monica stared at me as if she had been slapped. The silence that followed was thick. The oven clock clicked softly in the kitchen, sounding too loud. I'm not asking for every message, she said, slowly. I'm asking about this one. I shifted on the couch, suddenly uncomfortable in my own skin. You saw a name. You saw a screen for 1 second. And now you're assuming things. Her jaw tightened. I'm not assuming. I'm asking. There's a difference. I heard myself laugh once, short and bitter. It doesn't feel like asking. Monica's eyes filled more, but she held her posture. It feels like I'm about to be made foolish again. That sentence hit harder than any accusation. Because it was honest. Because it had nothing to do with me and everything to do with her past. And because I knew what it meant to carry a fear like that. I softened for a moment. I almost reached for her hand. But the damage was already spreading. You don't trust me, I said. Monica's voice broke slightly. I'm trying to. But you're making it hard. I stood up abruptly, not because I wanted to leave, but because I needed space. The movement made Monica flinch, just a little. That made me feel ashamed, and the shame turned into irritation. I'm not doing anything wrong, I said. She stood too, slower. Then tell me. There it was. The simplest request. Tell me. And still I did not. I looked at the floor, then at the kitchen counter, then anywhere but her face. My silence became an answer she did not want. Monica's hands went to her sides, fingers curling into fists. Philip. I cut her off. I came here to be with you, Monica. Not to be interrogated. The word interrogated was too strong. I heard it the moment it left my mouth, but I could not pull it back. Monica blinked fast, trying to steady herself. If you cared about me, you wouldn't talk to me like that. That one sentence landed clean. No drama. Just truth. I felt my chest tighten. I wanted to defend myself, but I also knew she was right. Still, the defensive part of me kept fighting for control. I don't know what you want from me, I said, even though I did know. I want honesty, she said. I want to feel safe. I want to know that when something scares me, you won't shut the door in my face. I stared at her. For a second, I saw how much she had risked with me. How many nights she had waited for me to choose her without asking. How she had finally let herself lean in. And I was standing there, turning her fear into a problem instead of meeting it with care. But even seeing that, I still felt trapped. Like if I explained, I would be admitting that my life came with complications. That I was not as simple as I pretended. Monica's voice softened, and that softness hurt more. Please, Philip, just tell me who she is. I swallowed. My throat was tight. And then, instead of answering, I picked up my jacket from the chair. Monica's eyes widened. Are you leaving? I need air, I said. She stepped forward. No, you need to talk. I shook my head, already moving toward the door. Not like this. Monica followed me into the hallway. The building's overhead light made everything look colder. She stood just inside her doorway, not blocking me, just watching, as if she could not believe I was choosing silence over her. You're doing it again, she said quietly. You're leaving instead of facing it. I turned toward her, my hand on the stair rail. I'm not leaving you, Monica. I'm leaving this moment. Her face crumpled. She tried to keep her voice steady, but it trembled. This moment is us. That stopped me. For a second, I almost went back. Almost said it. Almost reached for her hand and told her everything. But my phone buzzed again, as if mocking the possibility of peace. Monica heard it. She looked down at my pocket like it was a wound opening. I saw her expression change from hurt to resignation. The kind of resignation that comes when someone decides they were wrong to hope. Go, she said, her voice small. If you need to go, go. I stood there a second longer, waiting for her to take it back. She didn't. I walked down the stairs with my chest tight, my mind loud. Halfway to my apartment, I stopped and stared at the wall like I could force my thoughts into order. My hands were shaking slightly, not from anger, but from the realization that I had just done the one thing Monica feared most. I got to my place, unlocked the door, and closed it behind me. The silence inside was immediate and brutal. I sat on the edge of my couch and finally opened the message. It was from that old client, again. A line that sounded needy, familiar, pushing boundaries. It was not love, not real. Just someone lonely trying to pull me into something I didn't want. And I knew, sitting there in my empty apartment, that the message itself was not the real problem. The problem was that I had let it threaten what mattered. I looked at the clock, then at the door, then at my phone. For the first time, I felt what Monica must have felt after her breakup. That sudden fear that something good can disappear in one evening, because people choose the wrong silence. I did not sleep that night. I woke up the next morning with the same tight feeling in my chest. The apartment was quiet, too quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you aware of every thought you tried to avoid the night before. I replayed the scene again and again. The look on Monica's face when I chose to leave. The way her voice sounded when she said that moment was us. I knew I had handled everything wrong. I went to work anyway. I fixed pipes, replaced valves, nodded at people's complaints, but my hands worked on instinct while my mind stayed somewhere else. Every time my phone buzzed, my body tensed. When it finally went silent, that felt worse. By the afternoon, I stopped lying to myself. This was not about pride or privacy. It was about fear. Fear of bringing something messy into something fragile. Fear of being seen fully and disappointing someone who mattered. I finished my last job early and went home. I stood in my kitchen, staring at my phone for a long time before I finally typed her name. I deleted the message twice before sending something simple. Can we talk? I owe you the truth. There was no reply at first. An hour passed. Then another. I told myself I deserved the silence. Just as I was about to put the phone down, it buzzed. Come over. If you're ready to be honest. I did not grab my tools this time. I did not rehearse explanations. I just walked upstairs and knocked. Monica opened the door slowly. She looked tired, like she had not slept much either. Her eyes were guarded, but she stepped aside and let me in. We stood in the kitchen, not sitting, not touching. The space between us felt larger than the room itself. I'm listening, she said quietly. I took a breath and told her everything. About the woman from the message. About how it started as professional and slowly crossed lines. About how I had tried to ignore it instead of shutting it down clearly. About how my mistake was not the message, but my silence. I did not rush. I did not defend myself. I told her the truth, even when it made me uncomfortable. Monica listened without interrupting. When I finished, the room stayed quiet for a long moment. I waited for anger, for disappointment, for the door to close. Instead, she asked one question. Why didn't you tell me when I asked? I answered honestly. Because I was scared you would see me as complicated. And I didn't want to lose what we were building. She nodded slowly. And by hiding it, you almost did. Yes, I said. I know. She sat down at the table, pressing her fingers together. Philip, I don't need you to be perfect. I need you to be present. When you shut down, It makes me feel alone even when you're right in front of me. I walked closer, careful not to crowd her. I don't want to be that person. I don't want to leave when things get hard. She looked up at me. Then don't. That was it. No dramatic speech. No guarantees about the future. Just a clear line. I told her I had already sent a final message to that woman, ending contact completely. I showed Monica my phone without her asking. Not to prove something, but to show I had nothing to hide. Monica exhaled, like she had been holding her breath for days. I was scared too, she admitted. When I saw that message, everything from my past came rushing back. I didn't want to accuse you, but I didn't want to ignore my fear either. I understand, I said. And this time, I truly did. We sat there for a while, talking quietly, untangling what had happened instead of letting it sit between us. The tension slowly eased. The room felt warmer again. Eventually, I asked the question that mattered most. Do you still want this? Us? She looked at me carefully, then reached for my hand. Yes, but only if we promise not to disappear on each other when things get uncomfortable. I promise, I said. And I meant it. That night, we cooked together again. Slowly. Normally. After dinner, we cleaned up side by side. When she asked me if I was staying, there was no hesitation in my answer.